all things Astros with your hosts, sports writer Jeff Balke and Astros broadcaster and former third baseman Jeff Blum. Now, here's Balke and Blummer.
What is up, H-Town and Astros fans around the globe? Welcome to episode 36 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network. I'm Jeff Balke, and my partner, fresh off the winter meetings in glorious San Diego, Jeffrey Blum. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and of course YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep up with us. And give us a follow on Twitter at Believe in Astros. You can find me at Jeff Balke and Blummer's at Blummer27. Send us your comments, questions, obscure facts you might have learned about Blummer during Astros broadcasts. I'd like to know. I'm sure he's made a mention of numerous things, and I'm dying to. I ran across an article about you, Blummer, from 2019. A story from I think it was Channel 2 that did it, and it was all about how you balance your life. And one of the things that your wife said about you was that some of your daughters were just like you, and that you were all business.
Yep.
and as much as I want to believe that you're all business, you do seem like a jovial fellow as well. So I'm just gonna start calling you all business Blum.
Yeah. Well, that might have been, I don't know. Obviously a lot during my playing days, and it was more like in the moment, on the field, practice, that kind of thing. And I know that my daughters, if you watch their faces or if I'm doing a task, I have a particular, this is the joy of being married for, 20 plus years, is that you start to understand when that person is kind of dialed into that business mode. But, I get laser focused. I'll be working hard, or if I'm trying to, change an electrical outlet or hang a picture or something, all of a sudden, if I start to get kind of straight faced and the tongue comes out of my mouth, if I start, if the tongue starts moving, that's when, the brain is working overtime. And I think that's probably what she's talking about. Because I know my oldest daughter, we have pictures of her during a volleyball game, and she's kind of got her eye on the ball and her tongue is like, sticking out. So I think that's kind of where that comes from.
That is hilarious. The one my wife notices in me is when I'm writing. If I'm sitting down and I'm typing, whether it's on my laptop or at my desk, this is what I'll type for a little bit, and then I'll go like this, and I'll just stare off to my left for literally no reason. I have no idea why I do it, and I'm not even conscious of actually doing it. But my wife is like, You're staring to the left again. It's like, I'm dead serious. I'm in the middle of something, man.
That is my brain. Like, everything kind of shrinks, and that's like that focus or that zone that everybody talks about. And you can get into it, I'm sure, with writing. All of a sudden, everything's kind of here, and you're like, get that thought, bring it back, and go to town. Yeah, that's funny.
Absolutely. You gotta have something. You gotta have something to keep you focused. Rainy morning. I guess you're not playing golf today.
Played yesterday.
Sucks. Oh, you did play yesterday?
Yep.
Where did you go yesterday?
Westwood Country Club. I've got a great teaching pro over there, friend, Scott House, huge Astros fan, and we got to go play some golf, talk Astros, and we had a blast. And it was kind of interesting to be sweating your brains out on December, 8th or 9th or whatever, 8th? Yeah.
Dude, I put up the last of our Christmas lights yesterday, and I swear to God, I felt like I went and played basketball yesterday morning. I went and played pickup. And of course, that's always good for sweating your brains out. I didn't think I was going to do that at like 5 o'clock at night while stringing lights in the bushes in my front yard.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous.
Can't remember if it's a Progressive commercial or whatever. It was a couple of years ago when that guy's, it's all hot and he's like, it's like a sauna in here. And that's what outside in Houston in December feels like. It's like a sauna.
It's a damn steam room out there.
Yeah.
Well, first off, want to mention that the Astros didn't lose anyone in the Rule 5 draft, despite leaving a few guys available that raised a few eyebrows, which was good. They did lose 4 players in the AAA version of the draft, but they also took 4 back, all pitchers, 3 of them lefties. And for those who aren't familiar, Rule 5 draft allows teams to pick up players that are not on the 40-man roster, but only if they sign them to their major league club for the entire season. And the AAA version is very similar to that. It's just for AAA. So a lot of guys get signed from AA or single A ball and then get immediately moved up to AAA. So it looks like the Astros are just trying to stock up on some pitching depth. at the AAA level, especially given the fact that Hunter Brown is going to be on the Major League roster next year. And they're probably going to dig a little bit into that during the year. At least they think they might, especially the guy like Brandon Belak. I've got to imagine he's going to spend some time on the Major League roster as well. So probably to beef up a little depth there, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, and, this is very similar to the 2022 spring training going into it to 2023 in the sense that, you had an extended season, the lockout pushed everything back, so you have this abbreviated spring, but we also saw Dusty Baker, Jeremiah Randall, the head trainer for the Astros. They really did a good job of mapping out a game plan to protect these guys for the long run. And what I mean by protect these guys is, extend them a little bit, maybe give them a couple more days off in between starts so you can, kind of ease them into the season instead of immediately throwing them in there for, a quality start every 5 days. And I think that might be the idea too, is maybe, use that 6-man rotation, get Belak in there to give guys rest, so they're going to be diplomatic and very intelligent about it because it worked so well last year. The health of that rotation obviously is a big key to the Astros 2023 season.
Yeah, I think you just said it. Health is everything. It's the great equalizer in sports.
So true.
And so, if you're going to defend that world title, you're going to have to be healthy to do it. So we briefly talked about it before going on air. Let's talk about the money that is being thrown around in Major League Baseball. And by the way, not just a lot of money, but a lot of money and a lot of years to guys who are going to be 38, 39, 40 when these deals are done. I thought baseball had learned its lesson, but now last night, Brandon Nimmo goes back to the Mets, 8 years, $160 million, which is just bonkers. And I saw Michael Schwab on Twitter post that, and I just responded, yeah, no thanks. And then you have Contreras, obviously taken off the board. He gets 5 years, which is really a lot, I think, for a catcher. Yeah. He'll be 35 at the end of his. And all these guys that are older, like, what happened to age regression? I mean, what is going on?
I mean, analytics are there for a reason, and there's definitely this progression arc. And usually, to your point, that 27 to 32 is that sweet spot, that honey hole that, every guy has where they're just starting that arc to their peak, and then it starts after 32, you start to regress a little bit. But, dude, let's go back in time to the contract negotiation that happened over the last offseason. The CBA is what I'm talking about, the collective bargaining agreement between owners and players. We have seen this happen every negotiation.
Every time.
Having been a player, now on the media side, obviously I'm a fan of the game. We're not making money. We're not doing this. The COVID year crushed us. We're trying to recoup. Oh my gosh, Steve Cohen has stepped in and said, "What COVID? What are we talking about? We're crying poor, and all of a sudden we're giving Nemo what do you say? 280?
160 over 8.
160
and my thing
over
is,
8. He's at 20 million. Who's pushing these salaries? That's the other thing I want to know.
Right.
You cry poor. You pay all this money. Who is Cohen negotiating against?
Right.
Like, who's leveraging this price?
Yeah, never mind the big market teams. What the hell are the Padres doing? Giving Xander Bogaerts 11 years? Like, they're not a big market team. I just read today, they're the 4th smallest market in baseball.
That's crazy.
And they're just, I looked at they've got multiple guys now on their roster who are commanding huge dollars. Like, what in the hell are they thinking?
So going down to the winter meetings and just, the onslaught of people and the conversations you have, and, you have a couple of drinks, lips get a little loose.
Yeah.
Try and say that a couple of times. But with the Padres, I know that they took a run at Trey Turner. They took a run at Aaron Judge. They're taking runs at all these guys and finally landed on Xander Bogaerts, who said, "Hey, I'm right here. I'll take it." It was crazy to me to see that happen. But at the same time, with the Padres, it's also interesting to know that Manny Machado's contract has an opt-out clause at the end of 2023. So there's some interesting play with their roster and their organization. But being an ex-Padre also, I appreciate the hell out of what A.J. Preller is doing. And he's very in line with some of past GMs in San Diego who are just like, we're going to do this. We're going for it. But San Diego's the only show. Padres are the only show in San Diego. So I give them credit for trying to give their fans something.
Yeah, well,
And
they
compete
took
with the
Xander.
Dodgers.
They took Xander Bogaerts and they stabbed him with a trident. I mean, my goodness, we'll get back into more Ron Burgundy references because it's San Diego. But yeah, but
The negotiations escalated quickly.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I will say though that it is rich, and I use that word both literally and metaphorically. That these billionaire owners, I understand business. I get it. I get that you want to make money. I get that there are certain things that apply to that, and I get if you're a rich guy, those guys are going to get richer and they're going to spend, freely. But please spare us the whiny we lost so much money during the pandemic. It's like, yeah, so did everybody, man. Everybody lost money during the pandemic. You're no different. And so if you're going to do that, then don't turn right around and they spent over $1 billion during winter meetings. $1 billion. Yeah. I mean, let it go, man. Come on, just admit it. Admit it. And of course, these are all the big market teams too. But
yeah, you're exactly right. Obviously, there's teams that are going to be more frugal. You've got the Astros who have a very good idea of what they need and how to go get it. They're not going to fork out the $25-30 million contracts like we're seeing with these other teams. I think the Padres, to your point, kind of matched what the Yankees did a while ago with those three contracts of over $30 million a year, and then you've got the Rangers doing what they're doing with Jacob deGrom, Marcus Semien, and Corey Seager. You're going to have there's teams out there with the Padres, Mets, Rangers are in that category where you're going to have 3 or 4 guys taking up half your payroll. Yeah. It's amazing to see them
Phillies
go out
too.
there. Yeah, man, and you forget about the Phillies because there's so much money going everywhere else. Right. But I get the fact that you want to spend and get your team to be that good as quick as you possibly can. But I think more to your point and more to that collective bargaining agreement is, okay, the money's there. But how is the money there for 11 years? And how does that cost or that ROI that we always talk about, return on investment, you're going to get a good 5 years out of these 11, 10-year contracts. What do you do for the last 5 of those? It's amazing that these players are able to go out there and say, hey, sign me through my 42nd year, 41st year. It's unreal to me. That's the part that gets me. It's not the annual average value. It's the length.
Well, yeah, and especially hitters really do tend to fall off a cliff. I mean, there is that sort of real precipitous drop, particularly power hitters. You see that their power numbers really start to drop. We've talked about that before. The thing that is amazing to me with these long contracts as well is that you have these guys getting these long contracts until they're 38, 39, 40 years old or whatever. Never mind what's going to happen in the last 3 years. What's going to happen in year 5, right? What's going to happen if one of these guys gets injured and loses a whole season or whatever? Your roster is so tied up in money with these guys that, it's one thing if you're, I guess, like you said with Cohen, he can spend, he doesn't care. The guy was over the luxury tax threshold with 26 players on the roster. Just insane.
Yeah, he's going ludicrous speed past that.
Good call. Good Spaceballs reference. He is going ludicrous speed. No doubt about it. And so it is. I don't care if they spend money. Look, you want to spend a bunch of money, that's fine. Just don't whine about it when you don't have any money. And I will say that the Astros definitely seem like they have continued to stick with their plan. And
I totally agree.
And you can't say they're not spending money. They went out and signed Jose Abreu.
Yeah.
But look at what they did with Yordan Alvarez. Everybody's signing these guys to these massive deals. Yordan Alvarez is getting good money. He's not going to go broke. But it's not like they signed him to 11 years, like $250 million or whatever the hell these contracts are. The Astros just seem like they're spending smarter. And maybe that's why the Astros are so good.
No, they are extremely good. I think, even without a GM in place, there's still some brains in there that can actually quantify some of the numbers and maybe some of these contracts. The only thing that kind of concerns me a little bit with the Nimmo signing and having it as large as it is when you start to get these contracts and you look at it from that 35,000 foot view, it starts to set the market, and all of a sudden that market starts to climb. And the only reason I bring up the outfield market and a guy like Nimmo, you know who's better than Brandon Nimmo?
I know where you're going.
Kyle Tucker.
Kyle Tucker, 100%.
Tucker is head and shoulders above this guy.
It looks like he rolled.
If I'm an Astro, I'm going, oh dear God, what just happened? Steve, you're killing me.
I think he rolled. He obviously rolled the dice, and it came up. It came up right for him. He did not shoot craps when he decided to shoot down the Astros offer. That's for sure.
Yeah. So it definitely worked out for him. He's second team all MLB. He's one of the best outfielders. He's a face that's recognizable now because of the winning Gold Glove, stealing bases, hitting bombs, winning World Series. Yeah, his value is skyrocketed on his own, and then you get a little help from an outfielder that's less than Kyle Tucker, and all of a sudden that number changes drastically.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's going to rake it in as a result of this.
Deservedly so.
Unfortunately, look, he's still under team control for I think another 3 seasons. But it does make you wonder: is he going to be another casualty? Because I was telling somebody a few weeks ago, I was like, listen, if you want to go out and sign some of these big contracts, somebody was complaining about the Astros not signing. I said, listen, you have to make decisions about who you're going to get rid of. It's not like the Astros are poor. But Jim Crane is smart enough to understand that you can't just spend willy-nilly, and because it's not just about having the money to do it. It's also about having the ability to do it when you've got to pay other guys that kind of money too. And it's tough. You can't field a roster if you've got 4 or 5 guys eating up 90% of your salary budget, and it's just it's a mess.
But we talk about the Astros kind of creating this construct of an organization that's able to draft, sign free agents, develop, and win ball games. And now we're in this unbelievable spending spree. But one thing the Astros have been able to do since 2015 until now is spend wisely. I mean, that is what is really impressed, and maybe we don't talk about enough as far as a national media, is how wise the Astros have been in using their money to go out and win. That's what's incredible to me. And maybe someday later on, instead of some of these other crazy books we read, you'll read a book on how to spend your money wisely and how you can't just go out and buy championships. You've got to draft well, you've got to coach well, you've got to develop, you've got to have character, and you've got to go out there and play the game. And that's one thing the Astros have done over the last 6 years.
Well, yeah, Blum, you're 100% right. I mean, look at the just intelligent moves they made in terms of signing players. Just signing Alex Bregman got his extension. Jose Altuve's had his extension. They got Yordan. But then they've also put guys in around all of these guys. They brought guys up from the minors. They've signed, intelligently with guys like Michael Brantley and, Martin Maldonado. And I think that's really been something that they have to get a lot of credit for, right? I mean, it's such a big deal.
And also knowing taking a chance in letting a Springer go, a Garrett Cole, a Charlie Morton, a Carlos Correa. There were opportunities to really back up the Brinks truck and keep guys around, but they took a chance and relied on some development guys that they had, and it's really paid off amazingly.
There's no doubt about that. And now you've got Contreras is off the market. The Astros are still looking for a lefty. Now, I think Michael Brantley's coming back. I mean, all the word is that he's going to be back in an Astros uniform. It's just nobody wants to do anything until they can really test that shoulder, and they don't think they can even do that until early part of next year. So he might just be out there for a little while. But Andrew Benintendi is still out there, but I gotta believe now with the money Nimmo got, Benintendi's gonna. I mean, the Yankees are gonna back up the truck for Benintendi. I don't think there's any question.
That's how the market works. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what does that leave the Astros for in terms of a left-handed bat? They do want some balance in this lineup.
I would have to do a lot of digging to try and maybe find guys, because if you're not willing to go out there, and we just talked about that market, bumping and what it means for Kyle Tucker, but it means something for Benintendi also.
Yeah.
But Benintendi kind of has that baggage of being injury prone, I think, a little bit,
He does.
good as he is. And I think that he is an excellent fit. They were, the Astros were kicking tires on maybe possibly trading for him at the trade deadline last season. He's one of those guys that would slot in beautifully in like that 2 spot, or maybe later in the lineup, because he's a high contact, on base percentage, batting average. He does everything that you like to see in that Astros organization, where he doesn't strike out a lot and gets on base, which means he's going to score a ton of runs with the production guys that they have in that lineup. So that's what makes him highly appealing. He can play a great left field. Unfortunately, we saw that in 2018 when he was with the Boston Red Sox.
Yes.
But these are things that the Astros need, and that left-handed bat is something that I think Dusty Baker really likes, to really kind of break up the right-handers in that lineup. But if you don't have the money to go out there and spend, whoever's making these decisions or evaluating how to go get talent, the trade market's also out there. But what are you willing to go out there and get? Because I think if you start to look for guys, Dalton Varsho's a guy that I've heard name bantered about a little bit. He's got a couple of years of control, and in knowing that, you're going to have to really escalate the value of what you trade to get a guy who's still under club control. So that's some of the conversations I would imagine are going on in that Astros front office. Yeah,
you've got it exactly right. I mean, the Astros have a lot, and this is something I have on my list here to discuss. The Astros have, Sean Murphy is a guy that a lot of people have talked about as trade, but the problem is the Astros are very top heavy in their minor leagues. They have a lot of guys that are kind of getting ready to be in the major leagues, but they don't have a ton of depth. They've sort of pillaged a lot of their depth when they've made deals in the past and moved things around. So they're still trying to rebuild their farm system a little bit. And while they do have great top-end talent with some of these guys, you do have to kind of think, but do they want to pillage that and really be short on minor league depth going into this season? I'm not sure they do, and it does beg the question, if they are out looking for a catcher, can they bring back Christian Vasquez? I mean, he does know the system. He does know the pitchers. It's unlikely he's going to get a super long deal given his age. He seems like maybe the type of guy they could split time with Maldi, and you wouldn't lose anything defensively. If they really, because otherwise you're gonna play Corey Lee or you're gonna play Yainer Diaz. Diaz is a better defensive player than Corey Lee, but neither of them are great defensively yet, and I think the team is worried about that. Am I wrong? It seems like they are.
No, that seems absolutely reasonable to me, considering all the news that we heard that they were actually making a pretty good run at Wilson Contreras and trying to go get him to come into the organization. Obviously, Contreras' upside is the offensive side.
Right.
If you start to, if you compare apples to apples, Martin Maldonado is defensively is one of the elite, and I think going into this new rules era of pitch clocks and bigger bases, I think it lends itself to the opportunity for more stolen bases. So Martin Maldonado, holding on to him and coveting his ability to throw guys out, obviously the nickname, the machete, he cuts down runners, which I think is brilliant, but he also works well with his pitching staff. And no matter if you bring back a Vasquez who knows his pitching staff, or if you start to nurture a Yainer Diaz or a Corey Lee, you're going to really have to put Corey Lee or Yainer Diaz in the crash course of learning how to handle pitching staffs, because defense is going to be paramount for catching. And I think that those new rules are changing the idea of what a catcher is. And Vasquez is a great fit. He might be reasonably priced, reasonable as years are concerned. I think Martin Maldonado, can he catch as many games as you want him to next year? I think that's those are legitimate questions. And Vasquez having that experience, I think, gives him a little bit of a leg up over a Corey Lee or a Yainer Diaz or somebody else who might be available out there.
I'd rather have an experienced guy to play with Maldi right now. Anyway, defensively, you can always have a third catcher and rotate him in, but I would be, this is a team that's going to compete again for a World Series. and Blummer, honestly, I feel like the movie Scanners, because I feel like somehow you're reading my mind right now, and my head at any minute is going to explode when you talked about the rule changes. Because here's the thing, I think one of the most overlooked things in this offseason is how critically important defense up the middle is going to be. And that doesn't just mean second and shortstop, which obviously the Astros have well covered. It means catcher and it means center field. Like there is going to be a lot put on those guys in this type of offense. I mean, with these rule changes in these offense, with the bigger bases, with the no shift in the infield, I feel like, this may come back to it. I remember the era when center fielders, their primary role was to be great defensively and be fast, right? This may be another one of those times, which in that case, maybe Chas McCormick is the right guy for the center field spot, at least in part next year.
No, I think he should be, especially because I would bring back Michael Brantley in a heartbeat, just because I think his ability to be an influence in that clubhouse is one thing. If he can play left field every once in a while and put together a great at bat, he lengthens out that lineup ridiculously.
Yeah.
But just talking about the new rules, you can't shift on the infield, but guess what? You can still shift in the outfield. You can move those guys wherever you want. So you can put a guy like Chas, who may not be the elite center fielder, but you can put him in a position where he's going to make a lot of plays. And then you move behind the plate, and we talk about, the physicality of throwing base runners out, catching, blocking, all of these things. But how about the ability to be able to call a game and be prepared enough to be able to input the number into that pitcher's head within the 20 seconds or within the 18, 19, whatever the heck it is.
Yes.
That's going to be key, too, because if you don't have the idea of getting to the pitch the pitcher wants, you're going to have all kinds of scrambling, step-offs, rules violations, whatever the heck is going to happen.
Yes.
I'm curious to see that. But Martine's a guy who can think a pitch ahead and keep those pitchers in rhythm, because that's a big part of being a good pitcher, is relying on your catcher to give you the right signal so you can just catch it and go and not have to think too much.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, the ability to do throw pickoffs, because the pitchers can't do it. They're going to get 2 per, at bat or whatever it is, and that's it. So catchers, you're going to really have to rely on catchers to be able to gun guys down. I mean, Maldi seems to be the ideal guy for that, which is why he's going to be back and why the Astros rely on him so much.
Yeah.
But, and I think that's also conversely why they're nervous, if they are nervous. I don't know. I'm speculating here that they're nervous about guys like Corey Lee, because Lee is a good offensive player, but he's not great defensively. Diaz is better defensively, but I mean, where do you put? How do you rank those guys, and how do you make a decision about that?
Well, I think they're both great players, and what I like about both of Diaz and Corey Lee is the fact they're so athletic too. I mean, that's a unique position to be athletic in. The JT Real Mutos, I'm not saying these guys are as good, but could be, because they're able to play other positions, yet they're sitting behind home plate. So that tells you they've got great lower halves as far as legs coming out from behind home plate. They've got great arms. The biggest thing for me and a lot of these other guys, even across baseball, all organizations, is development was hampered in 2020 because of the COVID season. There's a lot of kids that didn't get to go to these off-site workout camps. They had to sit at home. And I know, not getting a full season of reps behind home plate or at bats set these guys back at least a year. And then you add in the new rule changes, how hard it is to be a catcher, catching 95 plus with turbo spin break on everything. These guys need the experience behind the plate to develop and get into the big leagues. But their trajectory has been hampered, but at the same time, they've got to speed it up in order to pick up time and back up a guy like Maldonado if you don't go get a veteran catcher to back up Maldi or work with Maldi.
That is really a great point, Blum, about being set back by that season. I had completely forgotten that the minor leagues were shut down essentially for a whole year. That's just a tremendous point, and probably why you get the big bucks. But I gotta say too, one person that we've talked about a lot that right now suddenly everybody's overlooking is Pedro Leon. I've got to figure that he's going to factor into the center field position as well. The guy's done everything he can do at AAA, right? What's gonna happen there?
Do you dangle him out there? That's a guy with club control who has potential, but I'm just saying. I mean, as an objective GM type thing, he's available. But at the same time, as an Astro, I'm going, I like him in center field. I like his bat. I want to keep him around.
Well, how good defensively is he, too? I mean, I'll be honest. I have not gotten a lot of time. I plan on going to a couple of Skeeters games next year. I really do want to go see it and see the ballpark and all that.
You mean Space Cowboys, right?
Damn it! I did mean Space Cowboys.
No, I have that issue with the Guardians.
The Guardians, right? I can imagine. How many times did you say Indians this year? And
ask everybody on Twitter. That's all they ever. The only tweets
do you have
I got all year where you're saying Indians, you're saying Indians. Oh,
do you have one of those swear jars? Yeah. You have to put some money in like the jar every time you say it.
Yeah, I'll be able to buy a new car by the end of it.
Exactly. Well, I wonder, like, with him, like, what is his defense like? Because I haven't really gotten a chance to see him very much. I know he's obviously a plus offensive guy.
Yeah, no, he's a plus offensive guy, but I think he's another one of those guys that needs the reps in the outfield because Pedro Leon, you've got to remember, I've seen him at spring training at shortstop. This guy's an athlete. So the part of being an athlete, you're already ahead of the game. And if you're playing a position like shortstop, we talked about the advantage of having good guys up the middle. So you're playing a primary position, catcher, second, short, center field. And they think enough of him to have the baseball instinct to play up the middle. But he's also athletic enough to go from shortstop, which is a hyper-athletic position to play, and then you move him to center field. And then it just becomes reads off the bat. Can you get a jump? Do you have the speed to make up for a bad jump? And I think that's where he's starting to learn a little bit. And I'm hearing that he is getting better, and I think that's a positive for him. But his bat, between you and I, much like a guy like Yainer Diaz or a Corey Lee, those guys, if you put them into a lineup, they're going to surprise you and produce a little bit. And I think Pedro Leon offensively is definitely in that category. But to your point, I think it's can he play the defense at the big league level?
He's kind of a compact guy too, isn't he? He's not like a
he's a powerhouse.
He's like a stocky. You know, he's not Jose Altuve, but he's like a kind of a small, like compact, stocky dude. Mm-hmm. But I understand he can flat out fly, which would definitely help him in center field. It's going to be a very fascinating next few months because the Astros obviously they're not overspending, obviously, which I think both you and I agree is a good move.
Yes.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if like the Astros if it's kind of, I'm going to say this now and I'm going to literally regret it within 24 hours, I bet. I was going to say, I feel like the Astros might just be quiet for a little bit. You know, we might not hear a lot of, and then of course I say that, and the minute I say that, I'm going to go online and Ken Rosenthal or Jason Stark or somebody is going to be like, the Astros have just announced they've traded away 10 players, and it's like... So, but I feel like it feels like it's about to be quiet time. It might not be, but that's what it kind of feels like to me.
Well, it feels like a lot of organizations out there are just kind of sitting, hunkered down in that bunker with their earplugs in going, dear God, what's coming at us next? You know, just the reverberation of some of these contracts is jarring. So there is some quality. But the Astros at the same time, it's got to be great for Jim and his staff to be able to sit back and kind of look and go, oh my gosh, did you see what they just did? And knowing that you're in a position to compete for another World Series in 2023, and you don't have to go out there and make that explosive move. You still got enough guys to go out there and compete with them.
And how do you feel if you're like the Royals or like the Brewers? Or the
Marlins. I mean,
the Blue Jays, like these teams that just don't have
the Blue Jays are a good one.
They
feel like they can compete, but they don't have the cash to go do it.
I know it's got to be incredibly frustrating if you're a fan of a really small market team. I mean, it sucks.
Well, it's either that or you say, you know what, it's going to be a lot more fun when we beat those teams that have these $300 million payrolls.
That's the truth. There's no lie. There's no lies in your truth right there, Blummer. You're spitting fire as usual, and that is why everyone loves you.
Yeah, a good cup of coffee today.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for joining us this week. We'll be back next week ahead of the holidays coming up. It's going to be should be a very interesting. Maybe it'll be quiet. Look, Blummer, maybe we come back next week and we're talking about. Who knows what? You never know. You just don't know.
You really don't.
And so please be sure to join us and crush that like and subscribe button the way the Astros crush the Yankees' hopes and dreams every year, which is one of my favorite things in this world. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Go Astros.